I would like to invite Dr. Nikky Guninder Kaur Singh up onto stage, and she will be the final speaker before our lunch break. So welcome, Nikky. She is professor of religion at Colby College and in Maine, yes. And she will give us a wonderful talk today. Thank you for coming. You always have great texts.
Thank you very much. It's really lovely to witness the celebration we just did and to be a part of the collaboration, Sikh-Jain collaboration. Really, I feel very honored. And I do want to thank Niranjan for organizing this wonderful, wonderful conference where we are getting to meet friends that I have known from before, new ones, and to see the young generation of scholars. It's really, the papers were great. Thank you very, very, very much. And I must say, I have been a recipient of Jain hospitality for many years. I remember being in Claremont and had a wonderful, wonderful time. So thank you, Niranjan, and wish you all the best to all of you with your really very insightful vision that you have, and may Waheguru give you all the blessings to concretize your vision. It's really wonderful. We need, the global 21st century needs that coming together, joining of hands. So thanks a million. My paper today is Guru Nanak's Sensuous Metaphysics. The Sikh religion lodged in Guru Nanak's Sensuous Metaphysics continues to bring about new potentialities and possibilities. In the collective memory of the Sikhs, their founder Guru, born in 1469, within a religiously plural landscape of pre-partition Punjab, had the revelation of being itself, one being, Ek Onkar. His response to the singular infinite reality was a poetic outburst that was most sensuous. His successor gurus used the pseudonym Nanak and reiterated his vision, each in his own voice, and each profoundly aesthetic. Unlike Plato, who found poetry too captivating and therefore banished the poets from his republic, the Sikh gurus utilized the poetic medium to awaken their followers with an appreciation for the infinite one. Sensuous poetry of the Sikh gurus can be summed up as a reflexive phenomena, simultaneously a celebration, articulation, understanding, interpretation, and application of Guru Nanak's divine experience. More than 25 million men and women worldwide rely on its existential power. It's a center of Sikh private and public life. It's the core of their religious and moral values. It is the sovereign presiding at all their ceremonies and celebrations. So today, the subtext of my talk is really kind of breaking those categories, the hegemonies, the Kierkegaardian hegemonies, and in all cultures that we have inherited. There is religion, then there is ethics, and then at the bottom rung of society is aesthetics, which is really the heightening of human sensibilities and senses. Kind of opposite of aesthetics is anesthetics. You go to the dentist, he or she gives you an anesthetic, you don't feel a bit. So this is kind of the opposite. And so we put religion here, anything to do with aesthetics, anything to do with the body, anything to do with the senses, get rid of it. It's bad, it's low. And I want to shift that. I really want, and I think that's what Guru Nanak, I'm just reiterating Guru Nanak and some of the papers that we've heard. Charles, ritual, why was he against ritual? The things that we are hearing, he even criticized the Lodi Sultans. We heard all those Jain texts being written for those against Prithviraj Chauhan and all. And then Guru Nanak comes and he's kind of critical for the same reasons for the Lodi Sultans. So it's very interesting how we have this kind of great, things that have gone in the past, literature that has been there. So Guru Nanak is coming on, and so sensuousness is kind of at the heart of it. And that's why I'm bringing it up. So I'm going to make 5 kind of general points. And then I want to look at the Japji, one stanza only. Japji stanza 38, which is the final one. And Japji, as we know, is the inaugural hymn of the Guru Granth Sahib. It's the first hymn, Guru Nanak's voice. It's recited by the Sikhs daily. And there's one little passage which I want to discuss with you. So that will be kind of an illustration of my 5 general points. And my 5 general points are, number 1, why am I emphasizing this sensuous metaphysics? Number 1, I think it substantiates Guru Nanak's personal experience. And here I would differ, like people have been saying, Guru Nanak has been a reformer, Guru Nanak has been kind of, he comes in the bhakti movement and so forth. Yes, of course he's a part of that very, very rich religious, cultural, philosophical, linguistic milieu, but he has an experience of his own, and that's very sensuous. And I want to emphasize that because that shows the origins of the Sikh tradition lie in his experience and his alone. He has a vision. And very interestingly, he calls himself as a poet, shair, from the Arabic word for poetry, al-shir, which is traced to consciousness and knowledge. The Asian understanding of poetry is very different from making or crafting that underlies the Greek poiesis. Guru Nanak is consumed by his awareness and love for the divine. And just a couple of months ago, I was writing a paper. I love poetry. And I said Guru Nanak was a poet, and the editor got really upset with me. He's not a poet. It's not poetry. So it's Gurbani. Yes, it's Guru's Bani, but it comes in the poetic form. So I think there too, we have this kind of, these scratches on our minds. Poetry is just of the ordinary world. But this is our world. What's wrong about it? So Guru Nanak in Rag Maj, by the way, Rag Maj is Guru Nanak's own innovation. And at the very end of it, he kind of gives an autobiographical burst. And that is, Hauta di vekar, we were just talking about the bards, Raat dehe vekar, turo farmaya, Tadi sache mahal khasam bulaya, Sachi sift salah kapda paya, Sacha amrit naam bhojan aya, Gurmati khada, Rajtin sukh paya, Tadi kare pasao sabad vajaya, Nanak sach salah pura paya. So here Guru Nanak is acknowledging that he was a bard. Good for nothing bard, vekar, useless, worthless. That's what he calls himself. Till he was called into the palace of the Infinite One. And he just leaves it as a palace. He doesn't describe the one. It is transcendent, cannot be put into words, cannot be idolized in any which way. Just leaves it there. But there in the palace, he is given an outfit. What is the word? Sachi sifsala kapda paya, kapda. He's given an outfit. Where does the outfit go? On the bodies. So he's kind of talking about it's a very palpable material experience. Sacha amrit naam bhojan aya. Then he's given this food. Sacha bhojan, sacha, truth, amrit. This kind of ambrosial naam. It's all of the name of the divine. That's what he's given. Bhojan aya, gurmati khada. With Guru's wisdom, khada, eating. Took it. Raj, naam, khada, rajtin sukh paya. Rajtin, raj, kind of satiated, enjoyed the food, satiated. So this kind of what I'm saying is this is how he sees his mission. This is the starting point of the Sikh tradition. He's given something, and we see it's kind of embedded in his corporeality, in his body. It's a very sensuous experience. And then he goes on to praise. Nanak sach salah pura paya. This morning I was thinking, what does the word praise mean? Praising, we all say chanting, reciting. But it's really praising is kind of recognizing. It's an experience one goes through. You praise somebody because you identified, that's somebody's good looking. That's something beautiful. That's something tasty. You're seeing something in the external world, which you're cherishing, you're savoring. So you're kind of articulating. So it's again a very sensuous. So this is what Guru Nanak is doing. So the praise of the divine, what his mission is, what the Guru Granth Sahib is, it's really Guru Nanak's praise of whatever he experienced. And that was infinite. That could not be bound. So it's that praise. And paradoxically, that praise flows out instantaneously, He's not thinking what he's going to articulate. It just comes and he starts reciting, and that's what Bani is. All of the Guru Granth Sahib is this kind of very spontaneous mode. And that kind of surprises me, actually, because it is coming very spontaneously, without mediations of any sort. and yet it is so beautiful poetry. And that's something I've always been puzzled by. I'm not saying anything more what I said as an undergraduate. I was at Wellesley College. I wrote my thesis, senior honors thesis, and it was on the physics and metaphysics of the Guru Granth Sahib. And somehow from day one, this is kind of, revealed word. It's spirituality to the nth degree, and yet it's so beautiful. It's poetics. And, we try to write a piece of poem and just think how much we compose and recompose and kind of go back to it. And here is Guru Nanak and the gurus and the various, spiritual teachers and all traditions. The words just come out. What's in there? What is that, that kind of inspiration, the divine revelation, whatever they had, and here it's coming. So, that's, so I looked at it, and if anybody's interested, it's a little sophomoric, but that was my first book. It was published. I got very good reviews. Now anything I say, people rip me to pieces. But in those days, I think I was only 19, 20 when I wrote that book, and boy, everybody just lauded it. It's called The Physics and Metaphysics of the Guru Granth Sahib, and it doesn't have Singh. It just says Guninder Kaur because it was published. It's by Sterling Publishers. And what I said was there, the words come in a gusty speed and form into lovely artistic designs, innovative similes, mesmerizing paradoxes, and brilliant metaphors. They create perfect alliteration and rhyme, lyrical assonance and consonance. The momentum produces geometric patterns, verbal arabesques, stair-like parallelism, and dynamic somersaults, which can awaken the consciousness to the infinite, permeating each and all. So that's what I had said, and I've given examples of all of it. So you can go back to it. So that's my point number one, that it is Guru Nanak's experience and his alone, and that's his revelation. Point number two is this sensuousness is at the heart of Sikh community. How did Sikh communities get started? And here we can think about Victor Turner, his spontaneous communitas, how things get created. So the community here, the Guru's divine experience, transpiring without conceptual constructs, ends up reproducing an ineffable togetherness amongst readers, hearers. This is what anthropologist Victor Turner categorized as spontaneous communitas. So through the Guru's sensuousness, I would say, Sikh subjectivity came into being, and through the Guru's poetry, it is sustained. So wherever it's kirtan, that's what sustains us. That is, we may be in Amritsar or we may be in Los Angeles, but it is the kirtan. It's that sensuous, what Guru Nanak felt, and we re-experience it. That's really the center of it. My third point here is that the sensuousness, what it does is it kind of creates a theological intimacy. The divine, we talk about God up there. Ik Onkar, one being is. And Guru Nanak's concept of the divine is really, it's all inclusive. The one is everything. Whether we call Ram, Rahim, from the Islamic world, whatever was available to him, he used it. Nothing is excluded. And even nirvana, which is no God, we may call total extinction, emptiness, that's also part of the one. He says that. It's in the Guru Granth Sahib. So nothing is excluded. It's really fullness, the wholeness of the universe. And we talk about universes today. Guru Nanak was talking about multiverses. It's a new concept, I think, multiverse. He was talking about multiverses. So everything is that one. What's the point of that one? That one he names as truth. Satna, Ik Onkar Satnam. Truth is its name. But unless we feel that truth, what's the point of it? So all that ritual and all that he's criticizing, it's really because people are not feeling. They talk about God, and we get stuck on concepts and theological discourses and debates without really recognizing the one. And there's a really, really beautiful verse of Guru Nanak where he says, Rasiya hove musk ka tab phool pachane. Only the person who relishes the fragrance of the rose, knows the rose. So it's not just sensual, but I don't want to emphasize, it's just because that's a binary, that's something stuck in our head, mind versus body. That's a Descartesian dualism. But it's not that, it's the oneness. How can you recognize anything? How can you cognize anything until you really sense it? So the senses are crucial. So the cognition of the flower, of the rose, or the cognition of the divine, of that one metaphysical reality, only happens if we are open to it, if we kind of, that's why he's praising. What is the Guru Granth Sahib all about? Praising the one. It's really kind of exalting the one. It's really recognizing the qualities of the one, infinite. Well, if that one is infinite, and if we're experiencing, how can we divide ourselves? This is Jain and Buddhist and Hindu and Muslim and male and female and all those kind of divisions. So it's really kind of, he's asking us to put those things into practice. That's what he's saying. So the sensuousness really brings to the core of the Sikh metaphysics, and it needs to be emphasized, and that's something we scholars don't like to talk about. So to me, that's very crucial. So that's my third point, that it brings a theological intimacy. The divine is palpably felt. My fourth point is kind of connected with that it kind of breaks the gender barrier. I mean, we heard a beautiful, beautiful kirtan last night, and one of them was Guru Arjan saying, I could be a Bairagan, Francesca's beautiful Gurbani kirtan. So this is a female, and most of the Guru Granth, what do the gurus do? They take on the female voice, take on the female sensibilities, take on the female ways of dressing up. So those are very sacred, those are very spiritual. And here we won't allow women to do kirtan in the Golden Temple or anywhere. What's going on? The gurus identified with, if the woman was polluted and all that, why would they become the female, take on the female as the paradigm? She's the model for spirituality and psychological sophistication. We have to think about these things. We just don't. I don't know where we get our views from. We have not broken. The gurus were progressive. They put something there, and we just, we have to, I don't know what level we read it at, and we don't quite, experience it or kind of fully understand. And of course, we are far from applying it. So we need to apply what we read. Connected with that, not only gender bias, but also connecting with the whole cosmos. I mean, we didn't inherit. There's God and there's humans, and then humans are given, the role or the power to name animals. This kind of hierarchical, vertical, creation story is not there. It's all together. The one is here, and the one is in that little ant. The ant is given great honor in the Japji Sahib because she has love in the heart. And there too, Guru Nanak, he criticized the elephant, the big fat elephant who eats a lot and belches. Why? Totally ignorant of the world around. Whereas the tiny little sparrow calls out, Khudai, Khudai. And he uses the Persian because that one is warbling. It's seeking the divine. So it's really, it could be, and so I've worked on it, I've used Julia Kristeva's semiotic approach to understanding what the gurus were saying. So the language of the Guru Granth Sahib entirely, I say it's poetry, it's that semiotic language, it's a maternal language, it is the language that is shared with the cosmos. It's not that kind of symbolic where the male patriarchal language, but it's really something that is in common with everybody. So that was my fourth point. And my final fifth point is that it is very, the whole point of the sensuousness is that it is full of epistemology. It gives us a lot of knowledge about moral values, ethical values. It's all there. But rather than telling us, do this, do that, it's poetry. We know laws do not work. Just think about India. No dowry, no female feticides. But just think how much is practiced there. So unless we change the consciousness of the people, nothing changes. And this kind of poetic medium that is utilized is to transform our consciousness. That's poetry. My Master Confucius talks about it. Because how do we change? Our consciousness changes through art, through literature, through music, because that goes deep inside us. And that's what we need to do. So the sensuousness is very, very significant. And that's where the ritual critique, and Guru Nanak can be highly harsh in his critiques of others. Why? It's not that he's condemning people of any faith, not at all. That's very superficial, because what they're not doing is really feeling what they're doing. So it's the feeling, the sensuousness, the corporeality, the materiality that he's underscoring. And if we do that, all religions, because it's the same one. It's the same, it's kind of, so my final, the point that I'm trying to make, it's really taking us to our shared humanity. And that's what he wanted. And we all say, oh, Guru Nanak said there's no Hindu, there is no... All these things that we have, we recite, it's really because he was showing us this common humanity. And what do we as humans have in common? Our senses, the 5 senses that we have. So that's what we need to refine. That's what we need to hone. And so at the end of, so these are my 5 points, general points. So I want us to see how they this was kind of a telescopic view, but how now, from a microscopic view, how they come across in the Japji. And as we know, the Japji starts out with Ikonkar, Satnam Karta. That's really kind of the giving, kind of absolutely no doubts of any sort. He doesn't need to make any kind of proofs, ontological or epistemological or moral or teleological. There is one being, Ikonkar. Truth is its name. So that's at the very beginning. And then it goes on. That's a prelude. And then there are 38 stanzas. And towards the end of the Japji Sahib, Guru Nanak gives a kind of a journey, a spiritual journey. And that's what is kind of regarded as the core of Sikh mysticism. So if anybody, scholars within and outside of the tradition, Sikh mysticism is those 5 stages that are mentioned in the Japji. And those 5 stages are, first is the realm of dharam, dharma, righteousness, duty, your obligation, where you are located in this world. And it's very interesting the way Guru Nanak describes it, latitudes of longitudes of our world. Dharam, he's very aware of time, very aware of space. So it's kind of giving it in a cosmic map. And that's where we are all plugged in. So that's our first one. From there, we move on to the second realm, the realm of knowledge, Gyan, where we learn. And the more we learn, the more we realize how little we know. And he mentions all sorts of deities, all sorts of languages, all sorts of political systems, all sorts of financial frameworks. So it's really kind of opening the individual. So it's knowledge. The third one is aesthetic, Saramkhand, because that's where your mind is chiseled. Surat, Mat, Man, Buddh. That's a Kadiya. Kadiya is really kind of sharpening. You sharpen a pencil and the blunt becomes refined, pointed. So it's a realm of art where Surat, Surti, our Surti, awareness, Surat, Surat, Mat, wisdom, Man, mind, Buddhi, consciousness, or the way the French talk about conscious and consciousness, the voice of conscience and consciousness coming together. So that's where they are refined. So that's the realm of aesthetics. And from there we move on to the realm of karam, which is action. Earlier, my first translation when I did, many years ago, my first book, second book or something, I did it realm of grace because that's how I learned it as, because that's what the scholars talk about. Then I looked at it more carefully. Karam is the action. That's where you act courageously. Once you know, you're confident, courageous. So and there he mentions all sorts of people along Sita and others. And so it's really kind of he's very aware of his past. And the women are put there, to show that they are courageous and valorous and so forth. And from there, we move on to the final realm, which is the realm of truth. And that is where the one lives. Sachkhand Vasain Rinkar. That's where the formless one is. And there he describes, it's all kinds of, it's Khandavar that's full of universes and multiverses and so forth. There's no end to them. No end to it. So it's really the infinite one. And then he says, to describe it as hard as iron. And he leaves it there. So those are kind of the 5 stages, and these are the mystical stages. I've written on it. My book on the feminine principle has it. I've written several times later. So that's what I've been talking about. But what intrigues me is the next passage, the final passage, and that we kind of overlook. And that is the 38th, the final passage of the Japji. And I will just read it for you. And what it is it's a... So are you guys with me? So he takes us to the realm of truth. Khand, Varpan, all that, whatever you can imagine, this cosmic multiverse. Then he pulls us into a workshop. Goldsmith's workshop. Jat pahara tirit sunyar, ahran mat ved hatyar, paukalagan taptao panda pamritatal, kadiya sabat sachi taksal jinka nadar karam tinkar, nanak nadari, nadar nihal. Make discipline your smithy, and patience the goldsmith. Make wisdom your anvil, and knowledge your hammer. With awe as your bellows, blaze the fire within. In the vat of love, pour the ambrosia, so the word is forged in the true mint. This fulfillment of action comes to those blessed with the gaze, says Nanak, free are they who are gazed upon. Now, the limitless continents, constellations, and universes of the realm of truth, Sachkhand, land us up in a smithy, driving us into our deepest self, while the metallic resonance of the Guru's iron simile, Nanak Katna Kardasar, continues to ring. The imagery shifts from the expansive multiverse of stanza 37 to a rather confined space. The familiar and ordinary workshop with its anvil and hammer, bellows and fire is a heart that beats sonically and forges the divine word on the crucible of love. Guru Nanak's mystical locus evokes a secular landscape. Clearly, the smithy is not a religious site. It is not a spot out in nature. It is not up in the mountains or in the forest. It's not far from home and society. If anything, the jeweler's workshop transports us to a narrow lane in the hustle and bustle of a bazaar, putting us in close proximity with fellow beings. Furthermore, Guru Nanak's choice of the goldsmith as a paradigmatic mystic defies the elitism of an upper-class Brahmin or that of Plato's philosopher king. Also, I started out by saying Guru Nanak called himself a Taddi. So Taddi is, as you just said, Nijwan has written a lot on it. It's kind of a lower class on the social ladder. And when you think about it, Sunyara, that's not high class either. So he's kind of, so I wonder if this is his own experience Guru Nanak is kind of talking about. You know, so kind of the parallel is there. The analogies just don't appear. So kind of identifying with the goldsmith. And so this is not higher up, and he does not make it any gender specific. So I actually just wrote a paper on, it's a 40-page chapter coming out in a mysticism book. And somewhere I translate as he, sometimes I refer to it as she, because Guru Nanak really does not make that gender distinction. So the goldsmith is a he, goldsmith is also a she. So that's kind of the starting point. So we also do not hear Guru Nanak addressing anybody particular. His extending analogies that, like of the smithy, in Sikh scripture are typically used to urge religious leaders from different traditions. So when he has, usually if you read the Guru Granth Sahib, if it's a long kind of a critique, it's usually addressed to a Qadi or a Mullah or a Yogi or a Pandit. And he wanted them to be authentic practitioners in their respective tradition. The absence of a specific interlocutor conveys mysticism's universal appeal. The agent working away in a smithy transcends gender, class, and religious boundaries and opens a mystical experience for everyone. Worldly orientation is the premise of Sikh mysticism. So it's really being in the world. The smithy, pahara, is specified as self-discipline, jat. Our attention is immediately drawn to the body, the corporeal and sensory aspects of the self. Human faculties need to be developed so they get to feel the reality. Guru Nanak does not negate or reject the body, as was the case of holy men seeking the divine in his milieu. Therefore, any discipline involving ascetic practices, breath control, pilgrimages to holy sites, purification rites, rituals of fasting, has no place in his praxis. Several preceding stanzas of the Japji categorically reject external measures, for they merely enfeeble the body. Actually, I love that you just read about the ears going to the very root. And I think that's what Guru Nanak wants it to go to the very root of the hearing. Sunye, how many verses in the Japji are for sunye, for hearing? So because that's kind of the sense that really takes us into our deeply, but I never heard that, hearing to the root. So that was very interesting. So he had that intention too. So several proceedings of the, actually we find Guru Nanak's ideal beautifully articulated in the journal of David Henry Thoreau. So Thoreau, when he goes to Walden Pond, what does he take? Nothing except for the Bhagavad Gita. So this was a text that was really important to him. And over there, he says, every man is the builder of a temple called his body to the God he or she worships, after a style purely his own, nor can he get off by hammering marble instead. We are all sculptors and painters, and our material is our own flesh and blood and bones. Any nobleness begins at once to refine a man's features, any meanness or sensuality to imbrute them. The body, as the temple of the divine, is prefigured in Sikh scripture, Kaya Har Mandir. Guru Nanak's goldsmith is an artist creatively fashioning the self. By making herself aesthetically attractive in a style purely her own, she's only spiritualizing her sensuous faculties. Guru Nanak does not prescribe any ceremonial injunctions. Balance and equipoise, practiced in the natural rhythm of daily routine, would be the way to build up her own flesh and blood and bones. Both Guru Nanak and the American transcendentalists share a melioristic goal to transform the self so there is full reciprocity between the inner and the outer self. In the prelude to the Japji, the ontological reality is named truth, Satnam. And for truth to manifest itself in a person, all mean and false impediments must be chiseled away. The corporeal is conjoined with the mental. So when we see, Jat Pahara, the next is Dheeraj Sunyar. For the goldsmith, Sunyar is patience, Dheeraj. When Hermann Hesse's young Siddhartha, and we can draw parallels, Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha, when he goes, I can think, I can think, I can, what are some of the other? I can think, I can wait. So he keeps saying, so patience. And then also, analogous to it, the Sufi path has the term sabr in it. It's embodied, and this attitude of Dheeraj is embodied in the prophets Job and Jacob and cherished as an important milestone on the Sufi path. In Sufism, it's a correlative of gratitude, shukr, and comes after the stages of repentance, abstinence, renunciation, remembrance, and poverty. In Sikh mysticism, though, it's a correlative of self-discipline, jat, and appears as the foremost station. Guru Nanak's goldsmith strikingly represents patience as an active and positive cognitive state developed through the cultivation of the body. Some translators rendered Dheeraj as resignation, and I think McAuliffe, he translates it as resignation. And I think that misses out on the active engagement of the word Dheeraj. So Dheeraj is really kind of creating a mental space where you're not angry or, what can we say? It's kind of, all kind of restlessness has been arrested, and all the senses are kind of, they're not taking off here and there, but you're kind of becoming whole. You're becoming kind of pulling everything together, and you're not, giving way. You're not victim of other emotions. And to me, the five birds do not take off. Guru Nanak's technique of slow, careful attention has much in common with the somaesthetic discipline of heightened body awareness fostered by Richard Schusterman, a modern American pragmatist philosopher. He's very, very interesting. I've been using Schusterman quite a lot in recent times. And so I find a lot of commonalities between Schusterman and Guru Nanak's sensuous experiences. The goldsmith, using her familiar five telescepters, is in the workshop, takes her time to make her jewel. So her whole self is actively and practically engaged. So I think I'll get towards the end. I want to say that Guru Nanak staged the goldsmith precisely as a model to be emulated. Step by step, the audience is distinctly guided, so they imbibe the goldsmith's sensibilities and practices and awaken to the radiance of the jewel they hold in their very hands. Sikh scripture constantly reminds us that this life is precious like a diamond. Heere jaisa janam hai, paudi badle jaye. Why? Because we don't think, we don't cognize, we don't realize, we do not recognize. So it goes for naught. Guru Nanak's camera vividly captures the apparatuses and workings of the goldsmith's workshop. Why? To disclose the preciousness of life. And that's why this person is a jeweler. This person is working with gold. The Japjis, so His whole methodical manual is really prepared very poetically, very systematically. The Japji stanza does not list rules to be followed warily. Rather, it offers effective lyrics that hit that visceral hub wherefrom readers, reciters, and hearers would naturally and spontaneously begin to see the formless one and conduct their daily affairs in accordance. Sikh metaphysics is socio-ontological. Grounded in the universal one, it reaches out horizontally towards family and the larger fabric of society. The spiritual climax for Guru Nanak is when truth is witnessed, overflowing in each and every heart. Right now, I'm working on 3 volumes of translation of the Guru Granth Sahib for Harvard University Press. I cannot tell you how many times I come upon this verse to see it in every heart, the same truth. That's really the right person, beating it, the transcendent beating in each and every heart. It's really a beautiful Nanakian verse and his idea. And that only comes with opening our eyes. I mean, this is people like Rudolf Arnheim and all who have done such wonderful work on perceptual seeing. You know, we see, but we really do not see. So the whole thing is to kind of get an insight into things, to see the one beating in each and every heart. That is his message. And, you know, we read, we recite, but what does it mean to really understand? And as Gadamer says, it's kind of understanding, interpreting, and application. The 3 kind of come together in that hermeneutic process. So to conclude, the sensuous metaphysics of the Gurus does not whisk readers away into some world of Plato's pure forms. It is not headed towards heavens or another world out there. The universal lyrics help make sense of particular social, economic, political, and religious problems that arise at any historical moment. The material and affective textures of the Guru's verse aspire to heighten moral and ethical sensibilities. The harsh critic of poetry quite well knew its force. Plato banned the poets from his republic. Why? Because poetry feeds and waters the passions instead of drying them up. The Gurus offered melodic verses for the parched empathy and humanity they witnessed. And we need to hear and understand and apply them. So I thank Niranjan again for presenting us the various melodies that we heard and to give us this opportunity to share with one another. Thank you very much. I don't know what the format is to give questions.
Yes, I think people would like a few questions. There's some questions. We have a little bit of time. We'll just have a little shorter of a lunch. That's fine.
Yeah.
Well, I was curious, you said that Guru Nanak assumes a female voice, but I just don't know that. I know Japji a little bit, not that much. I'm wondering in what way that happens.
The Gurus kind of take on, they address themselves as a female in their search for the divine. So it's like, and he actually, there are beautiful verses where Guru Nanak says, I wish I were a fish, female. I wish I were a female deer. I wish I were a female snake, serpent. So somehow his appreciation for the feminine, because the feminine is almost more Foucault, cultivation, all that. He finds that there's a cultivation that the woman has. And so the Gurus, and that may also be a genre, it's Bhakti, Sufi, many times we have that. So it's kind of it's a shared literary context. But for Guru Nanak, it's quite remarkable. And for the rest of the Gurus too. So the female is, and then the Japji, there's that verse of the ant, little ant has love for the divine, and how wonderful. Who gives a damn about those princes and, haughty people? So he goes, goes for the little. So that's the feminine and, kind of lauding that. Thank you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I hear him speaking as like a lover, but I never thought of it as a woman.
Taking on that, and then the groom bride symbolism and so forth goes on. Any other questions? I just want to say, sorry. Can I just make my point? One thing, why I want the sensuousness. I want to keep reinforcing it. Because it really charges us to do something here and now. When we think about religion, what happens afterwards? we always think what goes, heaven, paradise, out there. And what the sensuousness and the whole, I was used to the spa till I went to the palace. So there's something happens, in this, so to say, in this world. So I think Guru Nanak is kind of pulling us in this world. And this is kind of analogous to, feminist scholars like Grace Jansen and, who kind of said, much of our religions is very kind of necrophilic. We talk about death and after death, and we kind of forget what's happening here and now with our fellow beings. So this makes us more conscious, what's my nature around? What's my environment? Who are my people? Where are we? So Guru Nanak is like really speaking. So it's kind of making us more aware of our situatedness today. And I think that's why it's important to emphasize the sensuousness. But I might get into trouble because people, we have to talk about the soul. I've given, when I say Guru Nanak did not have this body soul, oh no, it's the soul. And, there's no word soul, there's jiva. So we kind of sometimes take the Judeo-Christian terms and kind of import them in the Sikh world. And it really doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, even last night I was seeing the sentences. There's no Lord there. Tohe mohe mohe tohe antar kaisa. But we have kind of inherited that world of, lordly world, and we kind of, people love that word, and we kind of use it, and I don't know, I just have a little problem. The internet is everywhere. It's beating in each heart. Sorry. And then that's it. I know I don't want to go further. Do you have a question?
You?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, yeah.
I think also Chris had
Oh, Chris.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're the one. Go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to learn more a little bit about the 5 mystical stages, and what is the word for statics? You said it's
Saram. Saram is the one, that's a good question, and people have translated in various ways. So some translate it from sharam, and some talk about sharam from the, sometimes it's Arabic, sometimes from the Sanskrit word, sharma, to work a lot, effort, shram. And so what I'm saying is there are many, you just look at all these scholars, they kind of give you, MacLeod has a good, in his discussion, he gives you a lot, with the various ways, the root of it, etymological root, how it's traced differently. But the passage itself, Saram Khand ki Bani Roop. So instead of going for all this etymological, scholarly, Guru Nanak spoke simply. And I think Saram Khand ki Bani Roop, the very fact, I think you can find the answer to it in the verse itself. Because Saram Khand, Khand is sphere, Saram, this ki Bani Roop, Roop is beauty. So the Bani, the creation, the language of the realm of Saram is beauty. So I just, so I feel aesthetics works very well. So that's my translation of it, the aesthetic. Does that answer? And the 4th is Karam. And again, with each of them, there's so much controversy and people come up with their different, where are these words? I mean, these are everyday words, Karam. And where is it? Is it from the Persian Karam, grace? Is it from the Sanskrit karma, action? So there's a lot of debate and so forth. And as I said before, I did grace, but now I do action, the realm of action. So, but these are fluid terms, and there's no translation. This is it. So I want you and our next generation to be thinking more and more and figuring out, because this poetry is really it's just there's no end to it. It's infinite possibilities, and we need to recover more and more. So nothing is authoritative. Nothing. So we need to. But the important thing is to kind of discuss and figure out and analyze and feeling. That's my basic. So I don't want us to be late, so I'll just put here. What?
2 more questions?
Oh, okay.
Can I?
Yeah.
If there is time. You mentioned about Rag Maj, for example, being the creation. You said it's Guru Nanak's creation. Of course, when we look at Rag Maj, the 2nd chapter of the section of the part of Guru Granth, as we know, generally we say that it's indexed in 31 ragas, it's Maj being the 2nd.
And all we have there is Var, the Guru Nanak's
Yes.
Var.
the only Bani is that of the Gurus.
Yeah.
So my question is there a reference? How do we say it is Guru Nanak?
Two more questions?
Yeah, that's not my realm. And this is what I read from scholars and
You
so forth.
mentioned about
Music is not mine.
Rag Maj,
So
for
whereas
example,
Francesca is,
you
so
said
this is
it's
what
Guru Nanak's creation.
I've not studied the Rag.
Of course, when we look at Rag Maj,
But that's what
the second chapter of the section of the part of Guru Granth, as we know, generally we say that it's indexed in
but you may know better. What do you?
Maj being the second.
Isn't that our understanding, the general understanding that the Bar Maj is? Am I right? Bar Maj is Guru Nanak's innovation.
So my question is there a reference? How do we say it is Guru Nanak's
Yeah,
creation?
that's not my realm, and this is what I read from scholars and so forth. Music is not mine. So whereas Francesca is, but this is what I've not studied the rags. So.
Yeah, so
but that's what we...
derivation is just because Guru Nanak is the oldest author. Is that how the derivation has been made, or is
This
there a
one,
reference to it?
mine is
Guru
the
Nanak is.
so the
That was
rag
my
that
first
I
question.
you may know better come across it because certain belong to the
Isn't that our understanding, the general understanding that the Bar Maj
I
is,
have
am I right, Bar
Is there
Maj is
anybody
Guru
else?
Nanak's innovation?
from whatever idea of scholarship within the pedagogy of Gurbani Singhi, we do not infer that. We say that Guru Nanak is the oldest author recorded, but there is no any reference that we have saying that he actually created it. That's how we take it.
Yeah.
Right.
So because there was a
Pope or
definition,
where coming.
I'm looking
That's
because you
the
guys are researchers. I'm just
There's so little knowledge. We've lost so much of it.
Would be safer perhaps saying the first reference, written account of Rag Maj actually is in the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, which is huge for the history of
To me, to be honest with you, what interests me is that that's his only autobiographical note. And that comes in March. So to me, that must be something very special to him. So that's where I draw. I mean,
again, there is.
So I'm more on the context.
I appreciate that. For example, there is. Yesterday there was a mention about Rag Asa, again a definitive statement when generally it is not just we all tend to be grown up hearing that Asa or Vadhansa are the creations of Guru Nanak. In fact, Maj is the oldest author is Guru Nanak, but in Asa the oldest author is Baba Farid, for example. But what I wanted to mention to you is that people remember, elders have remembered Asa being the favorite of Guru Nanak also. So perhaps
that
is
also
where
we don't know. How do we know that?
No, we've heard. It's hearsay,
So
but within the tradition, not from outside. Yes. The second point I wanted to, second question is, the last two quick ones are to do with the etymology part. You mentioned Sat Nam as truth is his name.
Truth name. It just says truth name.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, there are
so
no
my question is, how is Sat truth and not real? One, and Nam. How is Nam name? These are like general questions we've seen. Looking at translations is problematic.
Right,
so I would have, the last one is Ekonkar. I think you said it, there is only one being.
Yeah.
How is this meaning derived? That's would be my last one.
Interesting. So Sat, I mean, this is kind of a word coming from the Sanskrit word. Sat, Asat, we come across in the Upanishads, beautiful hymns talking about it. So it's no different from reality. What is real? What is truth? What is absolute? So we could translate. These are kind of semantic jargon. We can do it any which way. But the interesting thing is one. That's numeral. That's very much Guru Nanak's own. It's ik.
And the fact that
the numeral, and that is kind of, if I may say, finish, it is kind of common to all of humanity. That's the beauty of it. And Om, if you go to the Mandukya Upanishad, it's an experience. It's an experience of wholeness, totality. That's what it is. It's a beautiful, it's kind of the most sacred. So it's really that A plus U plus M, the totality of everything, the Turiya. And that's what, so it's an experience. So it's really, what it does is it elaborates my point about the sensuousness, the experiential dimension of reality. So truth, reality, but it's one, whatever, and then Sat Nam. So you're right, there's nothing, it's next. So it's literally Sat Nam. Period. It's very epigrammatic in its style.
If I may, If you were to take it for a moment in the order which Guru Nanak places it, we all, in the system of pedagogy, indigenous pedagogy, we understand the uniqueness of Guru Nanak there are two aspects. In fact, one is to use an arithmetic numeric 1 and prefixing it before Omkar, which has never happened in history.
Yes.
Now, if we were to look at it, like 1 is God. If Omkar is to be for a moment translated as God, 1 is God rather than God is 1. That could be very interesting, but I don't know how would that be.
I do not know that. No, because that's a very kind of, no.
How would one say this? Why would he prefix 1 and a numeric 1 before Omkar? And how is Omkar God?
I didn't say Omkar is God.
You said God is one being.
No, I said one being. Being. B-E-I-N-G.
So God is one being.
No, God is not. I'm not using the word God. No, I'm saying being. God is something, here we bring Mary Daly, she kind of says God is a static noun. Being, B-E-I-N-G, is a dynamic verb, which is not, it's like the root Brahma, growing, expanding, never kind of limiting. It's infinity that he's talking about, Guru Nanak is talking about. So that's what I am emphasizing.
So I want to invoke Anand Brahman.
Sorry?
I want to invoke Anand Brahman.
Yeah?
That we need to go have lunch.
Oh, yes. Let's go.